Good day, Miss Edelin here, students, and we're going to go over Chapter 2, Section 4, which is entitled Invaders, Traders, and Empire Builders, which kind of builds on what we talked about in the last period, about how Sumer was a wide open area and therefore open to invasion, but also influenced by a lot of cultural diffusion from all the various civilizations kind of blending together. So we know that eventually these independent city-states of Sumer are going to be united into empires, sometimes by nomadic warriors who are going to loot and burn the cities and others stay to rule. And our first strong man that we want to remember in this kind of story of Mesopotamia is Sargon. So around 2300 BC, he was the ruler of an empire called the Akkad. And what you want to recall is that this was the first known empire of Mesopotamia. He's going to force the city-states together, although he is not going to have a strong successor, and so once his rule is over, the city-states of Sumer are pretty much going to go back to the way they were and be independent again. So we have a gap in time. Our next strong empire is going to be the Babylonians, and in 1790, Hammurabi was the king of Babylon. Now his great big claim to fame, of course, is his code of laws. Hammurabi was the first ruler in the Mesopotamian region to codify, in other words, to arrange and set down in writing the laws of the land, which, by the way, is a really important thing to remember because laws are more protective of the citizens if they're written down. The citizens are responsible for knowing the laws, but also it holds the leader liable also. He has to admit that this is the law and he can't just make things up. We have this stele with Hammurabi here at the top, and the laws were written on this stone, and here's a close-up of the top where Hammurabi is kind of commissioning the writing of the laws. The laws were divided into criminal law and civil law. Criminal law, we're all familiar with, deals with offenses against others, such as robbery and murder. And then the civil law is more like what our private rights are, business contracts, taxes, and inheritance laws, okay? And Hammurabi was very protective in his laws for the lowly or the weak in society, such as slaves and women. Some of his laws allowed women to actually own property and pass it on to their children. If the husband died and she had to remarry, she could still pass on property to her children from the first marriage. Now, we know this area is going to see a lot of warfare and spread of ideas. We've already talked about that. And our great example here is the Hittites. In the 1400s, we have these people come out of Asia Minor, and they're the strongest because they have figured out how to separate iron from the ore. And they're going to bring the skill of iron making. They're going to bring their iron weapons and be able to conquer the Mesopotamia region for a while. When their empire falls, Hittite ironworkers are going to disperse across the area into Asia, Africa, and Europe and spread their technology. Okay, and that leads us, I wanted to show you this map real quick here. You can see the Fertile Crescent in this picture really well. And this is actually Syria. Do you see how Syria took up all this area down the Mediterranean coast and into Egypt? Now, Assyria is the first great big empire of this time. But I love this picture because you can see where Babylon is. You can see Sumer. The Chaldeans were a great people mentioned in the Bible. And you can see the term Akkad in here. And the Hittites would have been located up here. Just, it's kind of interesting. Anyway, the Assyrians are a very warlike people. They're very feared, and they began around the 1100s, and they would expand across Mesopotamia for approximately 500 years. and they were a very well-ordered society, and they, used the money that they got from conquering people to have big cities and splendid palaces. At Nineveh, the leader of Assyria, now notice his name is going to be real easy to remember, Assurbanipal, Assyria. He's a great leader who's going to found one of the first libraries that would have contained a whole lot of cuneiform tablets. Probably the Epic of Gilgamesh was housed there. And if you want a bonus point, come to class the next day after watching this and tell me where else you've heard of Nineveh. But anyway, Nineveh was like the capital of Assyria during this time. Now, eventually Assyria will fall to the Babylonians. So we're going to call this Babylonia 2. It's Babylonian revisited here. But it's the second time Babylon rises up in the 600s. And one of their leaders that we're going to talk about is Nebuchadnezzar. You've probably seen his name in the Bible before if you've studied Scripture in your classes before. But Nebuchadnezzar was one tough dude, let me just tell you. He is going to be a good leader as far as rebuilding canals, temples, walls, and palaces. He has also got a softer side because one of his wives was homesick. That's how the myth goes. And he built the Hanging Gardens, which were one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world, in her honor, for her to remember her home that she had been taken away from. Under his rule, though, the Israelites are going to suffer. He is going to take them captive and destroy the temple. So when Jesus comes on the scene, the temple that he visits as a child is not the original temple because Nebuchadnezzar has already destroyed it. Now, the last great big empire of this time period is the Persian Empire. And the great leader who puts all the geographic land together is Cyrus the Great, and he's a leader in the 500s BC, and his successors then will kind of unite this large territory, but he's going to conquer land all the way from Asia Minor to India. Darius, Emperor Darius, is going to be the unifier. So let's talk about what he did to unify this huge chunk of geography, because I'll show you a map of it in just a minute. First of all, Darius is going to divide the empire into smaller areas known as provinces. And look right here, we have a Persian word, satrap. The governors of the provinces were known as satraps. Make sure you get that vocab in. Also, he's going to draw up a single code of laws. It's been a while since Hammurabi in 1790. Laws need to be updated, and plus, it's such a big area. He's conquered part of Egypt all the way over to India, and all these different places have different laws. So we're going to have a single code of laws, and then he's going to build hundreds of miles of road. I do want you to note this royal road. I'm going to show you it in a minute. It's over 1,200 miles in length. Now see this map of Persia. Over here is India. You can see where it borders. And here's Asia Minor way the heck over here. And then into Egypt they controlled. And notice the road right here from Susa all the way over to Lydia. That is the royal road. A very large road indeed. The Greek historian Herodotus once wrote that there is nothing in the world that travels faster than these Persian couriers, which would have been the guys carrying messages. He goes on to say neither snow, nor rain, nor heat, nor darkness of night prevents these couriers from completing their designated stages with utmost speed. Now, if you want to email me, talk to your parents real quick. Find out who else says this, who uses this as their motto in America today, and email me, and I'll give you a bonus point for that. Now, other things that Darius did was he did set up common set of weights and measures to improve trade so that everybody measured everything the same way and you wouldn't get gypped in a deal. And finally, he's going to use a uniform system of coinage. And, the place of Lydia had actually started the money use of coins, but all these different places had different money, so he tried to make it more uniform. He also is going to encourage a money economy as opposed to just bartering for things where you kind of trade, say, eggs for some grain and so on. Money's going to be a lot more useful. During this same period, we have a Persian thinker come on the scene. His name is Zoroaster, and he's going to put forward some new ideas around 600 BC. We know that he borderlines on being monotheistic. We're not exactly clear as to whether it was monotheism, but he is going to really influence the religions of Christianity and Islam. He taught that a single wise God ruled the world and was in constant battle against an evil God. He also taught that there was a judgment day, that everybody would be held accountable on that day. And again, this religion is going to influence the baby religions of Christianity and Islam that haven't even been born yet. Now, our final place to discuss real quick is going to be the place called Phoenicia. It's right here on the coast, and notice all these red lines like spaghetti out here. This is all the places they were trading with. Notice they were trading all the way over to Britain. And then also notice all these little colonies, they're called. These were outposts, Phoenicians outposts. We're going to particularly talk about Carthage later on when we study Rome. Anyway, you may have guessed it, the Phoenicians are going to be big in trade. They occupied these colonies along the Mediterranean coast. They exported glass and purple dye. And finally, they were called carriers of civilization because of all the cultural diffusion that resulted from their trade in the Mediterranean. Last but not least, if you think about the term Phoenician, it sounds like phonics, and that's because they invented the alphabet that we still use today. Their alphabet, well, it's not the exact same kind. The Greeks are going to kind of put a little change on it, and then the Romans are going to add more, but it's from this original alphabet that the Phoenicians set up. And it contains letters that represent spoken sounds. This is what the original Phoenician alphabet looked like right here, and the Greeks, how they altered it right here. And this is kind of like our letters that we use today, represented kind of over to the side. And that's the end. I will see you in class. Remember to answer the questions in the folder beside this video.